Good morning. Good morning. Welcome. Hey, I am so excited. I love fall. I don't know about you, but one of the things I love about fall is that we get to kick off this programming year again and start getting back together. I miss you all over the summer. So it's great to be back. And whether you're here with us in person or online, welcome to this year's first Wake Up West Coast. This morning, I hope you had an opportunity to stop by our Morning Mingle sponsor, Disher. Disher is an incredible partner for us. If you didn't stop on your way in, make sure you hit them on the way out. Will you join me in thanking Disher for sponsoring this morning? We also have a program sponsor this morning, Independent Bank, and I'm joined here by Dan Plummert, who is the Senior Vice President and Group Manager. Welcome, Dan.
Long title, sorry about that.
Yeah, no problem. So Dan, love to take just a couple of minutes to learn a little bit more about Independent Bank. So tell me, what is it about Independent Bank that makes it a place that you enjoy working?
Well, I've been in banking for 27 years, and it is by far the best place that I've worked. We have an amazing group of people that I get to spend my days with, and they're here in the front table here. So they do a fantastic job, and the level of teamwork that we have is just incredible. So we take care of customers, and we help each other, and it's just a fantastic place to work.
That's awesome. Independent Bank has been a key supporter of the Chamber over the years, but I know that that's not the only way that you're engaged in our community. Tell us a little bit about how you all are engaged here.
Well, first, I did want to thank the Chamber for the Community Impact Day.
My favorite day of the year.
It was incredible. So, that was just an electric day for us, and I'm sure for many other people too. Just to see that many people in blue shirts doing service around the community, so thank you. So we had maybe 10 or 15 people working at the Boys and Girls Club that day, but another thing we take a lot of pride in is called Be the Difference Day, and for Independent Bank, we take Columbus Day. The bank's closed, and all of our employees go out into the community. Last year, we served 72 different nonprofits. This year we're hoping, I think it's going to be 78 nonprofits throughout Michigan that we're going to help as well. And not only do we give our time, but we also give our resources. Last year we gave, on that one day, $180,000 to those 72 nonprofits. So we love being out in the community and doing things like that.
Love that. Shameless plug for Community Impact Day 2025.
Hey, helping you out.
Right? We're shooting for 2,025 volunteers in 2025, so let's go. Love to have you all join us next year. Last question, just as we think about what you want people to take away from your time here this morning, what do you want them to know about Independent Bank?
Well, we're not a flashy bank. We don't buy naming rights to NFL stadiums. We don't have race cars that we sponsor. We do have a few billboards. Hopefully you've seen those. We've been around for 160 years since Abe Lincoln was president, so we take great pride in that. And really, I want you to know that we're made in Michigan. We live here, we work here, we support people that are in our communities, and all decisions are made here, not just loan decisions, but corporate decisions, HR decisions, marketing decisions. So we're proud that we're made in Michigan, we're only located in Michigan.
Wonderful. Hey, will you join me in thanking Dan and the team from Independent? So before we kick things off with our speaker this morning, you know what comes next. Always a bit of networking at a chamber event. And so this morning we're going to give you a few minutes to be able to connect with the people at your table. I'm going to ask you to share your name, your company, and a personal or professional best from over the summer. What's happened since we were last together? All right, go.
reserved for you.
Welcome back. Based on the level of noise in the room, I'm guessing you didn't have trouble finding topics to catch up with. But I also know that you'll keep doing this all morning if I don't stop you now. It's my privilege now to introduce our speaker today, Dr. Kevin Mays. Kevin's often heard saying, before you can lead anyone else, you've got to learn to lead yourself. Ooh, all right. You can see a little bit about what we're in for today. Dr. Mays is an award-winning coach, speaker, and author on helping organizations achieve system-wide growth. So be ready to be inspired. He's got great energy this morning to get us rolling. Please join me in welcoming Dr. Kevin Mays.
All right. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. I'm supposed to be inspiring this morning? Oh my goodness, fall just started. Oh, I love it. So this morning we're going to talk about something that I think you alluded to, right? How do you lead yourself? When we talk about genius problem solving, Einstein had a quote, and I'm going to slaughter it right now, but it's fantastic. Something along the lines of, we all have this inner genius that we just have to find and learn how to access. However, if you expect a fish to climb a tree, the fish is going to live a miserable life thinking it's failing. What are we saying here? It all comes back to how we understand ourselves. And during the next 40 minutes, I'm going to invite you to change how you think, to challenge how you think. You have spent your life, and we have, our education system has helped us learn to master the world around us and to be masters of that. But true leadership requires a focus that's internal, to understand what makes you tick, to understand the patterns in your thinking and in your feeling and in your behaving, because that's what gets you the results in your life. And if you want to level up the results you're getting at all levels in your life, then it's on you to start to turn your attention inward. And we're going to present a model today, a couple models to help you look at and understand. How do you get out of that caveman zone? How do you ignite the inner genius, the genius within? I love it. We've turned the page in our the season. Man, I came in, I moved back to Michigan, a good almost 10 years ago. Live up in Rockford now, but most of my work is around the country, so it was beautiful to drive by the airport this morning and not stop there, but actually make my way into Holland. I love it. I have a Jeep with the top down. I'm a diehard, and I left the top down this morning. All the stars are out when I left. It was fantastic. New constellations are apparent in the sky. The winter stars are out there. The seasons are changing. So with this, I love it, the turning of the page, the new season. What a great time to start to put summer behind and come back to looking at and doing the good work to make ourselves grow and get better. One of the difficult things for me I see, and I work in so many organizations around the country, is that we have this model where when you're young, you educate and you learn and you grow, and then what happens? We kind of stop and just keep doing the same thing. So we keep getting the same results, and what happens when we don't get the results we want? We tend to think it's the outside world that's the issue. We're going to turn it back in again during the next 40 minutes and give you some ability to look at yourself, a tool, a model. Now, one of the things, too, I love about this picture is not only the rising or the setting sun, but here's the thing that I know to be true, that leadership, and that's what we'll talk about today, leadership and problem solving, leadership itself is the most spiritual path a human could ever be on. Why do I say that? Because it's inherent, if you're going to be a good leader, to understand yourself, to understand those patterns that you have created for yourself during the course of your lifetime, and to recognize that sometimes it gets you what you want, sometimes it does not, and if you want to have the highest impact, you have to be able to learn how to cut through those patterns. And for me, that is a deeply personal, internal, spiritual path. So, like it or not, we're about to go on a spiritual journey here. I'm excited to have you along. One of the things you think about, leading in our life, we all know this, but all the resources in our life are expendable. We can get more of them. Get another house, get more money. The thing you cannot get is more time. How do you live your life with intention right now to use your time that is going by fleetingly? How do you use it with the highest level of purpose and conscious awareness to make sure you are getting the most out of it? We were laughing earlier how the days seem to go slow and the seasons go slow, but the years just go quicker and quicker and quicker and quicker. And before I had kids, I never evolved. I never changed. I was the same 21-year-old. And then suddenly, it all happened at once. I got married, got a house, got a job, graduated school, and my age doubled overnight. And now I'm watching my age go by as these kids. My son is taller than I am. My God, where'd 15 years go? Time goes by. How do we use this intentionally? So, quick little background of me. I moved here about 10 years ago back into Michigan, originally from Michigan. But this is my grand purpose. I've seen too many business leaders. Quick show of hands. If you're a business owner in the room, just a show of hands. Beautiful. Okay, now if you work for somebody else, quick show of hands. All right. And if you're a business owner but you wish you worked for somebody else? I don't know what's funnier, the fact that people laugh or the fact that people raise their hand that time. So often what happens, right, as owners is we get caught in the trap of doing too much, rolling up our sleeves. Those patterns that got us the level of success early on of being able to roll up our sleeves and get things done becomes the detriment the higher into leadership and ownership that you go. We're going to look at how you uproot those patterns. And I love it. My wife and I are both psychologists, right? Talk about these patterns that we're talking about. We have two children. Here they are, Donovan and Gavin. My oldest is Donovan. He behaves like, if you read a textbook on oldest children, he's it. Yet my wife and I are intentionally watching, and we're not doing the thing that we know to help him behave that way. But I can tell you what, he's the oldest child. Who are the oldest children in the room? Oh, what are the patterns of the oldest child? What do you learn? How'd you learn to be as the oldest child?
Really quickly, you had to learn how to do whatever it was to keep the family going.
You had to keep the family going. What else? Compliant. Oh, they're often more traditional. What else? Oldest children. What else did you learn? How'd you become? Trailblazer. One other thought. How else did you become? Oldest child. Responsible. Oh, is it possible that you oldest children who learn to be the responsible one early on, right? Because that's just de facto, that's the way it was. Mom says, take care of your sibling. So is it possible that decades and decades later you take too much on? Everything comes back to you? You're the responsible one? While the others get away with doing whatever they want, you're the one who always carries the weight? These patterns that you develop early in your life will dictate and drive how you lead today, whether or not it gets the results you want. We'll dig into how that happens. Quick synopsis, right? I'm working all over the place. I love it. If I don't get on a plane every month, minimum, I start to get a little squirrely, right? So right now it's silly season, I say. I'm traveling probably too much. That's why I love coming here and not being on a plane. But I work in industries, and the work that gets done is not only helping individuals lead consciously, with conscious awareness, and lead with purpose, to manage their own personality in a way that really helps them achieve the results they want, but then to create larger teams and the systems and processes that help the organization grow. So across any industry across the country, there's some basic fundamental principles that apply that we'll start to dig into right now. So what are we doing here? Okay, learning the key to become a conscious leader that gets results. 2 things, and discover how to solve problems like a genius. Y'all want to solve problems like a genius? Maybe you already do. Sorry, I didn't mean to offend you. And we're going to have a good time and be curious. This is a little picture of my dog. Curiosity is key. We know that it drives curiosity. That open mindset is the key to being able to grow and to really move to the next level. What got you here is not the thing that will get you to the next step in your life. It must be a consistent path of growing and changing and evolving. So the key is to recognize, first and foremost, what your current style is. Let me ask this question. Who among you has a leadership style you identify? Who has a leadership style? Show of hands. Come on, throw them up high if you have. Okay, others. Okay. Some of you, leadership style. Can you tell us what's your leadership style? Servant leadership. I love it. How about you, sir? What's your leadership style?
Probably more creative.
Creative. Okay, I saw in the back. What's at the back table? What was the leadership style back there? The quiet one. They're the quiet leaders. Of course, there's always a whole room full of them. Here's the thing. Yes, go ahead. Lead by example. Anybody else? Who are the lead by example type? Oh, all you oldest children, put your hands up. Come on, we know you're out there. You're the hard workers. Like Mom always said, if you want it done right, you do it yourself. So you're the ones doing it yourself, taking it on, the martyr, carrying all the weight for everybody. So let me ask this. Who are the youngest children in the room? Okay, now, all right. Oh, I love that waving back there. What did you learn being the youngest?
I was spoiled.
You're spoiled? No. I was on Mackinac Island and I saw 3 T-shirts. I love it. It spoke to me. 3 T-shirts for children. One said, I'm the oldest. I make the rules. You oldest, you know this. You were the rule keepers. The traditional ones, the responsible ones, the diligent ones, the hardworking ones who made Mom and Dad proud. Then there was another shirt that said, I'm the middle child. I break the rules. The middle children often are the creative ones. They stand relative to the oldest. They're not the traditional one. Often that role, and we play a role, that's all it is. We play a role that differentiates us from the oldest child to get our attention needs met. They break the rules. Youngest children, what's the T-shirt say? There are no rules. There are no rules. It's so funny, but I can tell you, I work with and coach CEOs and executives of large companies, and guess what patterns I see them playing out? 5 decades later, the same pattern. There's the maverick youngest child. There's the overly accommodating middle child. There's the command and control oldest child. Again, nothing wrong with any of it unless it's not getting you the results you want. If you want higher results in your life, then it's on you to be able to peel off the lens that you look at the world through. to have that deep level of conscious awareness and look at and understand that cognitive framework that you developed over the course of your lifetime. So this cognitive framework I'm talking about is something that we develop early on. Now, you think about this. Humans have large brains, right? We have large brains that allow us this executive faculty, the ability to think at a higher level and solve problems. Because our brain is so big, we're born before we're fully baked, right? So we're born half-baked. Maybe that's not it. But you know where I'm going here. We're born with our brains not fully formed. So what happens in the first 5 years of our lives? Our brains are forming. We are forming 1 trillion neural connections in our brain a year. That's 250,000 neural connections a minute. That's crazy. 250,000 neural connections in our brain a minute based on what? Now animals are not born with their brain underdeveloped. They come out and they're ready to run, right? A deer in the spring can stand up and start walking within a half an hour. You don't see this with human children. Why not? The brain's too big. Okay, so this tells you why humans are more susceptible to the environment. The environment starts to sculpt how we think about ourselves, how we think about the world around us, and that belief system that we cultivate. Your beliefs drive your behaviors, and your behaviors get results. Beliefs, behaviors, results. Say it with me. Beliefs, behaviors, results. This is key. It's a mantra. If you have this boiled in your head, it will serve you really well. When you see you're frustrated, you're irritated, you're not getting the results you want, guess what? You can back up. It's about something that you are doing that's getting the results you get. And you know what? Everything that you do is driven by a thought. In Christianity, they say it all starts with the word. In Buddhism, they would say, with your thoughts, you create the world. It all starts with our thinking. And understanding those deep-rooted beliefs that are often invisible to us because they were developed in the first 3 or 5 years is really tough to do. This is the work, to peel off and understand what those belief systems are. So I love it. I asked you who has a personality, and how do you, what does that mean? I asked you who has a leadership style and what that looks like. And guess what? That was a trick question, because we really don't have leadership style for the most part. What we have is our personality playing itself out at work. And then we call that our leadership style, right? So again, I can trace it back with all the executives I work with and leaders and business owners, and the same thing. You'll see, they're a type A, they work really hard, that's great. They get to a certain level, but then they're trying to scale the business, and what happens? They have their hands in everything in a way that undoes the work they're trying to do. So out of the gate, the thing that's important is for us to define what is personality. I love it. You all have it. Well, let me make sure. Show of hands if you have a personality. Okay, there's a couple that don't, but for the most part, you know who you are, and they definitely know who you are on the table. So it's a silly question. Do we have a personality? Of course. Key to be able to define it. What is personality then? On your table, I'm going to ask you, there is a page that has some notes on it. I want you to take that, pass it around, everybody to have one of those so you can follow along. And I want you, if you have a writing utensil, to be able to fill in the block and tackle and start to think this through. What is personality? How would you define it? I'm going to walk around the room, so might call you out to ask, what is personality?
The way you relate to others.
The way you relate to others. Yeah, sounds right, right? What is personality?
How you express yourself.
How you express yourself. Fantastic. What's personality?
The way you react to things.
The way you react. What do you think? What is personality? What do you got? What is personality?
They took mine.
Oh, they took it. They took it. What is personality?
Your hobbies and your interests.
Your hobbies, your interests. What else? What is personality?
How about your sense of humor?
You what's that?
Your sense of humor.
Your sense of humor, right? There's everything. It's you, but it's really important to have some block and tackle. So we're going to put a model together. It says there's 3 elements to personality. What might those be? If I could break it all down into 3 key components, what would you guess? Where would we start? What's personality? But what are one of the key 3 elements? What would you guess? Leanne, where would you start? Yeah, just throw anything out there. There's no wrong answer. I know, on the spot, like, oh no. There's no wrong answer. What do you think? Personality. What do you got, Jeff? Well, yeah, any. What's one of the core pieces of our personality? If we were to define it, where would you start? Introvert, extrovert, how you show up to the world. Brilliant. I love it. I love it. You've been educated, a little Myers-Briggs action going on there, huh? What do you think over here? Personality.
Life of the party.
Life of the, oh, that's you. Look at you. You can tell that. She's like, oh, here's my personality. What would you add?
Just like how you like view life, how you go through life.
How you view life. What do you view life with, right? There are 3 key elements that are ingrained in us. So when you see what this is, you're going to like smack yourself like this is very simple. You might be overthinking it. Personality is simply, there's 3 elements. There's what we think, right? What I said earlier, with our thoughts, we create the world. So part of it is those processes and systems of thinking. There's what you feel, your emotion, and then there's what you do, right? That's it, the beginning, middle, and end. Personality is something that you establish. Part of it is born into you. Part of it's your genetic. A lot of it is what you experience growing up. You start to develop. How do you do this? As humans, there's one thing we must have to survive. What do we need to survive? Water? Brilliant. What else? Water and what else? Oxygen. So you take an infant, put them in a house with some water and oxygen, they're good to go. Interaction. I think of it generally as attention, right? We have attention needs. We come into the world, we are unscripted. We don't have personalities, and we are trying to get our attention needs met in the most primal way. And we learn to behave a certain way early on, and it's stimulus and response. We don't have the neural network of connections yet. Remember, 250,000 connections a minute. We're learning immediately. When I do this, this happens. And when I do this, this happens. My oldest son was 2 years old when his life radically changed because this other creature came into the house, his brother. Immediately, he was no longer the baby. Immediately he was the big boy. He was the helper. He was the one who stood up to try to help mom. Guess what? That is cemented into his neuro fabric. It drives how he moves through the world. He's the responsible one. The youngest child took the role of being the baby. Now it's 13 years later. His role has not shifted. He's the baby. And he is a future world-class soccer star. Because he can fall down and fake an injury like I have never seen anybody do. And what happens? Mom rushes in and rescues him because she just wanted her little baby. And she'll still say, my little baby. So he plays this, and he's special. The timelines don't apply to him. It's time to be off your switch. Time to be off technology. The oldest child, he's off 2 minutes beforehand. The youngest child, what's he say? Oh, I'm almost done. And then you ask him 5 minutes later, I'm almost done. 5 minutes later, I'm almost done. 5 minutes later, I'm almost done. 20 minutes later, he comes upstairs. Somehow the rules don't apply. How does this happen? Recognize he didn't come into the world with this, but the DNA, the cognitive framework that he developed over the course of his lifetime absolutely will drive how he shows up. Now, here's the great thing to recognize, right? We have patterns of thinking, we have patterns of feeling, patterns of behaving. But those things are not us. We're something more than that. And that's the spiritual end we're going to talk about. But here's something I think that's really important to recognize. That when things go our way, we behave a certain way. When things don't go our way, something happens. How do you explain what happens when things don't go to your way? Does anybody recognize they behave differently when they're frustrated, irritated, or things don't go their way? Ah, yes. Guess what happens? Your brain changes how it's functioning. So here it is. We have these patterns of thinking. And when we have a self-concept, that's the deepest ingrained belief that a human has, their self-concept, their ego identity. So deeply ingrained we don't even see it or know we have it. But when things support, when they validate, when they agree with this deep-held belief system that we have about ourselves, what is the emotion we feel? Feel a sense of pride? How do you feel when things validate, when you get positive feedback? Get a little swing in your step. You get that swagger, right? And this way, humans are very conditional. Our reactivity and the way we move through the world, we just move through the world. Most people don't exercise free will. Most people just react to the things they perceive. And when things validate their belief system, they feel good. But what happens when you have a self-concept? Growing up as the youngest child, I had to be smart, I had to be creative, I had to be funny. I didn't have to. Nobody told me that. But that was the role I learned to play to distinguish myself in my family, and it worked for me. What happens when I get feedback that says it's not working? Or I had this one, be important, right? Always people around me. So now I had this be important, be smart drive, and I'm here with this group of people, and I say this joke to you all, and you all just stare at me. What's the emotion that gets evoked? What's that? Rejection. What else? What are the emotions you experience when things challenge the beliefs you hold, your self-concept? What's it feel like? Embarrassment. Yes. We might feel fear, might feel shame. I know a lot of people will struggle with guilt. A lot of those type A individuals, right? Because they're perfect. They're responsible, they're diligent, and if they're not everything to everybody, they start to feel guilty. In those moments, they're not in charge of them. The guilt is in charge because we make decisions based on that emotional reactivity. Who among you makes emotionally driven decisions? Have a look around. Some of you are suggesting you don't, but here's the trick. It's a trick question. We all do. Our decisions, now we're looking at brain scans, right? So I'm a neuro researcher, and you look at how the brain operates. When we make decisions, the limbic centers of the brains fire. It's that simple. We all make emotional decisions. The question is it a low level of managed emotion, or is the emotion in charge and driving what we do? And what humans will do is make the decision that keeps the emotion positive and favorable, because we're hedonists. We want to feel good. So we don't want to make the decision that doesn't feel good. Instead of making conscious, rational, intentional decisions, we make decisions that support the belief set we developed when we were 5 years old. That allows us to feel good, and then we feel validated, even if it doesn't get the results we want. Gosh, I worked with a CEO yesterday who is a great facilitator for the organization, has the hardest time making the hard decisions, feels a deep sense of guilt about it. So she procrastinates on the hard decisions because of the guilt she feels. Now the guilt is in charge, the guilt left over of the 4-year-old self that she was. Instead, she wants to be pleasing to everybody, and that's the work, right? Is to not let emotion make the decision. So you think at our best, our thinking mind is in charge. We have low level of emotional reactivity, and we make conscious decisions that drive us towards what we want. When things don't go our way, the whole thing tips upside down. Our personalities change, emotion is in charge, and that sneaky emotion starts to spill over and affect our thinking, and it absolutely affects our behavior in ways that we might not even see. When I get frustrated at home, I show up differently, but I don't see myself. I show up with my wife, and I'm a little short, I'm a little brusque. She reacts to me, and guess who I think the problem is? What's wrong with you, woman? She's like, you are wrong with me. It's me. We don't see ourselves, right? This is the work to be able to turn back and look at yourself. Now, here's the cool thing, that while we have these three aspects of our personality, as I said before, you are not the patterns in your thinking. This is the work, to be able to extricate, peel yourself back from that belief script that you created, because we're conditional. When we see things that agree with the beliefs we have, it evokes a nice positive sense of emotion, and that drives our behavior. And we'll stay in our comfort zone, but that's us just being on autopilot. If you want to truly do it differently, you have to touch into something larger. And this is that spiritual element we're talking about, that energy that's in us. However you understand that wordless part of who we are, that energetic quality, a spiritual soul within us. It's that sense of deep presence. And when you find that place, you're in a position to be able to cut through some of those patterns, regardless of how it feels. Because guess what? Leadership is not about feeling good. Leadership is not about how you feel. Leadership is about creating a result. It's about elevating people. It's about creating the best and evoking the best in people. And when done well, it creates an entire culture of individuals who are engaged. You know, the Gallup organization says merely 30% of people are actively engaged in their job. 30%. That would suggest that in this group, right, 30% of you are actively engaged here. And they would say 20% are actively disengaged, right? They're sabotaging, they're doing things in their own mind to undermine the success of the organization. These are national averages based on decades of research. 20%. This would say 20% of you are actively disengaged. So just so we know, show of hands if you're the actively disengaged one. Oh, it's always somebody else. It's always somebody else. No, it's us when we're triggered. Right? When we're in that emotional reactive spot, then we become the actively disengaged. The key is starting with yourself to understand yourself, because there's this quality called neuro-mirroring that starts to happen. If I'm frustrated and I come into your space and you're in a good spot, what's going to happen? Your brain is going to start to function differently. And what does it look like? I'm irritated, I get short, you get short with me. But the key is, if you can keep your presence, stay aware, and be intentional, you can bring me down instead of me bringing you up. This is the power in leading. Before you can lead anybody else, you have to lead yourself. And you cannot solve problems when you're in that emotionally reactive state, because a different part of your brain is in charge. So this is a call, step one, to make sure as the autumn is upon us, to reenact those disciplines that you have that exercise those mental muscles of presence and of awareness. We go to the gym and work out physically, but we forget how important it is to exercise the mental muscles, because guess what? I can guarantee will happen if you don't. The same thing you always done will be the same thing you always do. And it's a linear path, and it's going to get you more of the same, but it's not the pathway to get to the highest level of your potential. That requires you to suspend that pattern, cut through, and do some things differently, starting with just practicing the skill of presence. Whether it's in learning how to be present when you're working out, when you're doing yoga, meditation, church, whatever it is, be able to develop that thing. And actually, I think the chores of life are a great place to practice that ability to be present, right? Because sometimes we want to get done with this thing, we lose our presence. No, when you're washing the dishes, can you bring your entire focused attention right here, right now? This is key. Presence out of the gate. So this is the key for conscious leadership. I love it. We have certification programs where underneath it all, we teach the skill set of conscious leaders. This is an organization I work with, and it's amazing to see when individuals show up in a way that they get out of their own way and they learn to really be present and conscious, it changes how the organization functions. Now you get organizations with deep alignment. Super, super powerful and fun. Right? But what happens when we don't? When we personalize and we take what we perceive personally, then you get these kind of toxic environments. And that's the work of conscious leadership, to pull that out, pull out the toxicity. So we've got certification programs. Just a quick note that that's just part of what we do. Certify people to become conscious leaders, to create high-performance teams, and to grow their business. Now, the key is to recognize now, okay, so we've defined personality. We understand there's three parts: what you think, what you feel, what you do. It's essential now to understand that within us, we actually don't have one brain, we have three brains. What are the brains? The genius, the caveman, and the robot. And understanding this is going to be key to problem solving effectively. We have 3 brains. Like, how do you make sense out of that? What are these three brains? Number 1, the genius is the prefrontal cortex, right? This is the part of the brain that when Einstein talked about it, we all have that genius. We all have that ability to access something higher within ourselves. When we are making good decisions, when we're really solving problems at the highest level, we're utilizing this prefrontal cortex. Our genius brain, we have the genius hat on. We're solving problems. When things don't go our way, the caveman takes over, right? That Cro-Magnon part of us, fight or flight, but now we do it with adult sophistication, right? I can say it with an inflection in my tone when I'm frustrated or ticked off to my wife, but sometimes I'll use great short words, and I'll say all the right things, but the way I say it will absolutely be a defensive posture. And then we had this autopilot quality, the robot brain. The robot brain is what we call the neocortex, right? It's a different part of the brain. When we learn a new habit over time, we establish that habit so clearly we don't even have to think about it anymore. So think about learning to drive. Who knows how to drive? Okay, just want to make sure you're still awake here. Right, this is the ridiculous thing, but think about this. When you learned to drive, what did it take to learn to drive? My son's 15, he just went through driver's ed. It takes all your focused attention. You don't have those patterns established in your neocortex, let alone your brain overall. So when you're driving, you are focusing completely on your prefrontal cortex, your genius brain is in charge, and you're learning this new skill set. Until eventually, over time, what happens? You get it to the extent that you don't have to pay attention the same way anymore. Who among you has driven 20 miles down the highway and have no idea how you got the last 20 miles? What on earth is going on? How does that happen? Once you learn a new skill, a different part of the brain takes over. The robot brain, it's actually a different part of the brain. While the genius brain's in front, the robot brain is deep in the middle. And that part of the brain establishes that new habit pattern, so you don't have to think when you're doing that thing anymore. This is why it's so essential. Like for teens, for example, it's so imperative that they don't text and drive because all of their attention needs to be focused on driving. However, once you're an adult, texting and driving is fine. Just tell the police, no, my neocortex is in charge. I'm fine. It might not go over that well. But think about this. Who has learned to drive, mastered that, you don't have to think about it, and now you go travel overseas where you're driving on the other side of the road? Anybody? Yeah, what's the experience? What's the experience? Disorienting and stressful. Here's the beautiful thing to recognize. You have these patterns now. You learn the skill. The prefrontal cortex, the genius brain learned it, passed it over to the robot brain. Now it's this autopilot. You don't even think about it. And then suddenly you go into a new environment that requires you to do things differently. This is why change is so hard for people. Because what happens when you're at the intersection, I can tell you wholeheartedly, you're at the intersection and you know you have to turn into a particular lane. And if for one moment you stop paying attention, what'd you do? Ever turn into the wrong lane? Yeah. You're right. I was in the car on one side, turned and talked to the person next to me, and I knew where I had to go, and without paying attention completely, I started to go into the wrong lane. This is what we do, and recognize that we have 8-lane superhighways in our brain, which when we come into the world, our brain is a wild jungle, and we start forming patterns, right? If we want to get from our hut to the jungle, we realize there's a particular pathway we need to take, right? To get our attention needs met. So we go from the hut to the river to get our attention needs met. We learn a certain pathway, a certain way to do that. Guess what? If we want to go back to the hut, we're going to follow the same pathway. And over time, this jungle starts to get a pathway worn through. And the pathway, the single track becomes a 2-track. The 2-track becomes a dirt road. The dirt road becomes a state highway. And over time, it's an 8-lane superhighway. That's what is in the robot brain, these 8-lane superhighways that without exception, if we're not paying attention, we're going to default to the old way of doing things. What old way of doing things? The oldest children will be the ultra diligent, responsible, sometimes, right? There's a certain role we play that will take over. The middle children will be out of the box, creative thinkers, which is nothing wrong with any of this unless it's not getting you the results you want in your life and in your organization. I've seen too many folks who are really good at being the devil's advocate. The rules didn't apply or they bucked against the rules, and now you put them on a team and they become detrimental. Their key gift is being overshadowed by their need to be the one who stirs the pot. Now, it's important on teams to have a devil's advocate, but when somebody always plays that role and can't get out of it, at some point it becomes detrimental. If we're trying to create a world-class organization and or you just trying to live your life on your terms, it's absolutely essential to recognize and have a deep awareness of what these patterns are. Now, we have these 3 different brains. There's a quick skill set I want to tell you in the next just a couple of minutes about what to do then. How do you get out of these places when you get out of it for yourself and help others? If you see somebody, let me ask a question first. If somebody is in this caveman state, their limbic system's in charge, they're being driven by emotion, and you're at work, what would you see them do? How would you know it? What do you witness in somebody else? Running around crazy. Absolutely. What else? They shut down. How about in emails? What would their email look like? Say that. Aggressive. What's aggressive? I've seen somebody who just types in all caps. That's simple. Or they get short, or they get curt, or they have a little condescending, or there's a mixed double message in the messaging. What's it look like when you see them face to face? They have a lot of energy going on. They're frustrated. They're short. They come off as, again, condescending, sarcastic. These are signs that you have to be aware of in others when they are in this caveman state. Number 1, control yourself. Bring yourself back down through that practice of presence we talked about, right? To get out of that reactivity within yourself and to recognize that the narrative in your head is not the correct, is not correct. It is just a narrative in your head. It's not the ultimate truth. It's just a series of a pattern of thinking that you've developed that now you're connected to. Our suffering comes not from the world, but from our attachment to our ideas. Because when I know my way is the right way, then in that moment I'm making you wrong, and that I'm not listening as effectively. And then often that becomes the point that evokes the trigger in the other person, drives the caveman result. They get condescending, short. This is the great thing to recognize, and where you can gain mastery when somebody's escalated is to get them out of the escalated state. Step number 1. If you want to have influence and get people to solve problems effectively, they will never do it. In fact, I was on the phone yesterday with another woman, head of HR for a company, and she was disheartened. She said, she talked to her staff, and they were feeling kind of beat down. They weren't feeling heard, and they were feeling like there was no solution forward. And she was trying to ask them the right questions to get to think about how they could do things differently. So what's happening? She is entering in from this genius perspective, trying to ask them questions to solve problems, but they are ingrained in this caveman spot where the limbic system is taken over, and they don't have the capacity in those moments to answer the question. They don't have the capacity. They feel like they're stuck in a hole. They feel helpless. They feel angry. And nobody will solve problems effectively when they're in that state. You won't. It's not possible because your brain is operating differently. So the step number 1, get out of that reactive state and help others get out of that. And there's one key skill I'm going to challenge you to practice today with folks, right? Demonstration of empathy. What's that look like? Matching and mirroring and simply repeating back. What I hear you saying is, and matching and mirroring their posture. This is the beautiful thing. Because people don't really get into disagreement, they get out of alignment with each other. And when we're out of alignment, you'll start to see it physically play out, right? You'll see people who are frustrated and they're doing this and they're leaning back. Oh. When you start to enter into that space with them, start to match and mirror their physical posture and reflect back what you hear them saying, it's magic. I task you today to try this. match and mirror their actual posture and watch what happens. There's an alignment that happens because our brains are taking in 2 million pieces of data every second. Our unconscious mind. Our conscious mind is only aware of about 27 pieces of data, right? We don't even know we're seeing it, but our mind is picking it up. And when there's an alignment, we start to mirror the other individual. So key, first of all, repeat back what I hear you saying and practice. Just watch this and watch what happens. You will be astounded. So here's the first thing. Eliminate the genius in others, eliminate the caveman when you see them in that spot. Number 2 is you want to get them into this higher level thinking. Open-ended, solution-focused questions. Solution-focused, open-ended questions. What do you think the next step is? What do we need to do from here? Doing that is the pathway that engages the genius brain. If you want to solve problems like a genius, you have to have that genius brain available to you. There's libraries full of books on problem solving, but what they don't tell you is this, that you can never solve problems unless you have the right brain in charge. You must get that brain in charge, that genius brain. And it actually burns more calories. It takes a lot of energy for that creative problem solving. It works. I mean, it works you out, but it works. And you can't do it when you're frustrated and irritated, and others can't do it as well. So we want to get them out of the place of frustration into the place of being able to solve the problem, and then through direction and consistent feedback, we're starting to train new patterns. We're teaching people to drive in a way that when they do the new habit again and again and again, it starts to change how their mind is thinking, and they don't even think about behaving a certain way. So if you have employees in your organization, or you're looking to have influence differently in your life, recognize that. Whenever somebody's frustrated, they will never hear your logic. The hard thing is when we're frustrated, we want people just to understand us, so we start to explain ourselves, and you all know it's a beautiful waste of time. Right? This is about being conscious, being intentional, and leading on purpose. This is the final thing I'm going to leave you with. You got to know your purpose. Who are you trying to be as a leader? Without clarity of that, I can say with 100% certainty, you will keep doing the thing you always did. So it's really essential, again, to take off that lens, that cognitive framework you developed, and look at it and ask yourself, who's the person I want to be? As we turn the page into a new season, it is absolutely possible to teach an old dog new tricks. That is, you in your seat can elevate. If anybody can bring a higher level of leadership to the organization, it's you. But it's about being intentional and cutting through the old patterns. So there it is. Work together with intention. What somebody said once, I like to leave you with Jim Rohn. If anybody knows Jim Rohn, never wish your life were easier. Wish that you were better. Unleash your own genius first. Develop that sense of presence and awareness. And then the last quote, work harder on yourself than you do on others. Jump forward really quick and say, thank you. Thank you. Be intentional, be present. You guys are awesome. Thank you, thank you.
Kevin, thank you so much. You've given us a lot to think about. Britt and I kept looking across the table at each other this morning on some key discussions we've had, so I know this will continue as we leave here this morning.
Beautiful.
Thank you also to the team at Disher and Independent Bank for being our sponsors this morning. Will you join me in thanking them one more time? So next month, you are in for an absolute treat. My friend Jennifer Owens from Lakeshore Advantage will be our speaker. She's made a little video for us this morning to give us some insight on what you can expect. Let's take a look.
Hi, West Coast Chamber friends. It's me, Jennifer Owens, president of Lakeshore Advantage, the region's economic development growth organization.
There she was. She's back.
Development growth organization. And I am so excited to get a chance to join you on October 8th at Wake Up West Coast, where I'll get to unveil our annual industry trends report. Every year, Lakeshore Advantage talks to 120 business leaders in the area to get their insights and their feedback on challenges, barriers, and opportunities. And on October 8th, you'll get to see the first exclusive look at our industry trends report. You're gonna find out what we're seeing from growing industry clusters, business barriers to growth, and what the growth trends are for the next 3 years. I cannot wait to see you on October 8th. But now, I got to get back to work.
So you're gonna have to come next month to find out if she's gonna wear that hard hat the whole time while she presents. I wouldn't put it past her. So I hope that you'll join us on October 8th. Jennifer and her team do remarkable work in this community, and this industry trends report is really key to understanding the direction that this community is going. So I'm excited to have her and the wisdom that she brings. Before that, though, is our annual awards celebration, and that is on Thursday evening, September 26th. If you haven't already bought tickets, I hope you'll consider joining us. It is the must-attend event of the year. So with that, thank you so much for joining us today.
May I say one
Go,
thing?
yes.
I'm sorry. I just would be remiss if I didn't offer, as I'm traveling a lot, I've talked to many of you beforehand, would love to offer an opportunity to sit down and figure out what you might do for your business. We have all kinds of programs that can help you grow. So I got Kyle in the back of the room to help offer free coaching to just make sure you're aligned and moving the direction you want to go. My goal is to be helpful. I'm here for you.
Perfect. So if you're interested, stop up here, see Kevin here after the program. I'm sure he's got some more information for you as well. So with that, go and make it a remarkable day. Thanks, everybody.